Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Christina Furtado, and I am the Mental Health and Wellness Specialist with meCARES. I do wish to acknowledge that the land that I am hosting today's discussion is from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Nishabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. I would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many different places, near and far, and I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. So thank you, Miigwech. Ensuring mental health is just as critical as ensuring physical health. Mental health problems have become rampant in our society, and athletes are not immune. With restrictions slowly lifting and our, beloved sports teams and athletes start engaging in their lifelong passions and expertise, we cannot overlook the fact that they too may struggle, but yet not show it. I'm honored today to be welcomed by a group of individuals that have had front row seats to the struggles experienced by today's athletes. From professional Olympic coaches to mental health mentors, our panelists will discuss the importance of changing the culture around mental health in sports. Today, I welcome and would love to introduce our following panelists. Hello, everyone. So today we are joined by three wonderful people that I'm truly blessed to have. We have Michael, who is a man of many different hats. From a mental fitness coach to a consultant to an author. He is a certified law of attraction success coach, and he understands that each one of us can actually create the results we want, the desire that we want, anything that we want through thinking habits, developing new skills, and even implementing a new positive outlook. Michael's had a passion for hockey on and off the ice, even from the time that he was younger. Playing 4 years at the junior level league to coaching. He's even written a book called Mental Fitness Training, Get Your Head in the Game, which is geared towards hockey coaches. Truly blessed to have Michael join us today. And not to mention, which I do have to mention, that he's also developed a keen interest to golf. Now, I myself am not familiar, I'm not a golfer, let's be honest. It's not something that I've engaged in because I can't. It's not a skill set I have. And though Michael has definitely been at the forefront of so many greats towards the coaching and mentoring junior golfers in the PGA professionals since 2013. So thank you, Mike, for joining us.
Thank you.
Now we also have Melody Davidson. Welcome. So welcome. Prior to joining Own the Podium as a high-performance advisor, Mel Davidson has enjoyed a, we'll say, decorated career within Hockey Canada women's program, securing her first Olympic gold medal as assistant coach in 2002. She went on to lead the Canadian women's hockey team to Olympic gold in both 2006 and 2010. After switching to a managerial role, she then added a further Olympic gold in 2014. Mel has coached Canada's in 4 world championships and have won gold twice. We're truly honored to have her. She has also been named the Canadian Women in Sports Most Influential Women's list 5 straight years in a row, from 2007 to 2011. As a highly acclaimed figure within female ice hockey, she's dedicated most of her life to promoting it, and we are truly honored to have her join us. So welcome, Mel.
Thanks, Christina. It's great to be here.
Excellent. And then, of course, we have Wayne Lomas, and I hope that I pronounced the last name correct. Yes, because I worked on it this morning. In a career spanning more than 20 years, Wayne has successfully led a variety of teams and high-performance programs at club, university, and national team levels. He's led Australia's high-performance swimming system from 2015 to 2018, a period that extended to the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, where Australia's team won 10 medals, 3 of which were gold. In June 2018, Wayne joined the Canadian Swimming to lead the para-swimming team to the 2020 Tokyo Paralympic Games, which due to COVID has been delayed, unfortunately. However, is now due to join and start in August of this year. So super excited for that. At his first major event with Team Canada in 2019 World Championships, Canadian swimmers won 14 medals, the most by a Canadian team in many, many years. Purely tribute to the guidance and mentorship that Wayne brings to all of his team. He asks each member of his team to adhere to simple philosophy of demonstrating respect, courtesy, as a way of building a high-performing team. So I'm truly humbled and grateful to have each and every single one of our panelists join us today. So thank you again. So as I mentioned, with restrictions lifting, fans from all ages across the world can be found cheering on their favorite athletes from the stands or even from their homes, all showing a love not only for the sport, but an admiration for those in the spotlight. And quite often we view professional athletes as influencers, not only as social media has come to the forefront of using that platform to adhere and sort of promote various initiatives. It can also be a platform that can be added stress, added barriers. Athletes are considered to be role models, criticized every single moment of every single day, both on and off the fields. It's a hard time, though. It's really hard not to idolize these athletes and desire just to be like them. However, we must not forget that these larger-than-life individuals, in some cases these superheroes, are human. They have feelings, they have thoughts, and they have stressors. As human beings like you and I, they experience life's joys and they experience life's pains. Now, all the Real Talks that we've done have been focused on various mental health topics in our goal to break down the stigma that surrounds mental health, encouraging people to tell their truth, stand in their power, and share the struggles that they've experienced in the hopes of inspiring others to do the same. The reality is, though, within the sporting culture of all levels, there is an inherited stress that comes with it, pressures, expectations. Now, we do know that when expectations go unmet, that is the mother of disappointment and the mother of frustration that just adds. Over the last year, we have seen more than, I'd say, 20 plus elite and professional athletes actually stand in their truth and speak of the struggles that they've experienced. We need to lead by example, and though we also need to have an appreciation and understanding for the experiences that our athletes actually go through. We may be fans, but we're also humans. Now, again, that personal stigma exists across all ages, across all boards, across all worlds. Drawing attention to an issue makes people aware that it actually exists. So when we're talking about personal stigma around mental health, and it has lessened, and there's a lot more that we have to do. There's a different type of stigma that may exist within the sporting industry. And again, we're talking of all levels, even from, the junior levels of our kids playing soccer just for fun. It starts even then. So, Michael, what do you think sort of still is maybe some of the motivation or driving force between the stigma still existing at such a powerful rate within the mental health aspect within the sporting industry?
Well, I think that certainly my perspective as a law of attraction coach, I have a sort of a real quick, brief answer, which is because we constantly talk about how there's still such a stigma around mental illness and mental illness. As much as we tend to call it a little more, I see it more and more calling it mental health. We still sort of reference it as mental illness, and I think that because we refer to that, the language needs to change a little bit. And we speak about physical fitness and physical training constantly. And I think it's time to talk about mental fitness and mental training as well. And that's how I think we're going to have to start to make a change anyhow. I mean, no one balks at us for having a personal trainer. But sometimes if we have a therapist or a counselor, it's deemed that there's something wrong with us. So I think those are factors that we need to consider. It's obviously getting better and better, but there's so much more we can do. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge believer in talking about it. When you talk about it, you create awareness of it. But I think it's really important to watch the language that we're using, so that we're not getting stuck. Sometimes if we beat the drum of negativity over and over, we end up getting stuck in that place. So I think the key is to identify the issue, accept it, and then move forward from it. I love what David Kessler is a leading expert on grief and loss. He says, when asking about how do you get out of a terrible place, he says, take a deep breath and one step forward. I think that's good advice, both in sport and in life.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mel, what do you think with regards to the stigma that still exists within the sporting industry?
Well, definitely the language. I mean, language in today's society is so important on how we frame things and what we do there. So I think that's incredibly important. I think for me, the biggest piece around sport is creating a better culture around it. So at times coaches and leaders aren't overly educated. I mean, I've done a lot on professional development and growth as a coach in a lot of areas, and I can honestly say anything I had to do on mental fitness I had to pursue on my own to learn about as a coach. So the more we understand it as leaders and as front runners, the better we will be at creating an environment, using the right language, and being able to have the conversation and make it a free-flowing conversation, if you will.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And again, it sort of goes to where, there's been a lot of focus, as there should be, on the benefits of sports, even from a young age with regards to what we get, boosting the critical thinking skills, the leadership skills that you can even develop. So when both of you are highlighting the fact that language is a critical element to shifting sort of the dial slightly and lessening that stigma and allowing, anyone, frankly, not just athletes, but anyone to be comfortable and secure to share their experience, we definitely have to reflect on. Now, when we sort of, just for those that listen, I meet with the panelists just for a debrief so we can sort of chat about today. And something that Wayne actually mentioned that I thought was quite influential in contributing to language shifts. And that's with regards to connection and teamwork. And I think that part of the stigma that does exist is that personal stigma is definitely fueled by that individual's standard of perfection or achievement versus the excellence, which is when we're in that state of perfectionism, it's a competition against someone else, being better than someone else, versus the excellence mindset, which is more focused on, one's competition of oneself. Am I the best version of me today? What did I learn? And can I be the best version tomorrow? And in speaking, and Wayne, back to you, in how you manage your team and focusing on that teamwork and those aspects of respect and quality and courtesy, how do you think that can help contribute to lessening the stigma more so?
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for the opportunity. And just before I go there, I just want to reinforce something that both Michael and Mel have said. Words matter. I can't think of a more powerful statement than the words we use, the words we write, the words we speak. They matter. And the words that I say may have an intention, but the words that you hear may have an effect. And I think it's a really powerful point to make. So I just wanted to highlight that. For me, it's such an important piece. Within the realm of perfectionism versus excellence, it is absolutely. I come from an individual sport. It is about being the best version of yourself and competing with no one but yourself, but being a fair competitor. And I think that it's play by the rules for yourself in terms of respect. So the piece around respect for me is vital, but that respect starts with the respect for me, for who I am, for what I've tried to do, the best that I'm able to provide. And if I'm able to, and I often say to my staff, my team members, the person in the mirror is the most important judge that you need to look toward. And if you can stare in the mirror and have a frank conversation with the person you see in the mirror and be honest that person is giving their best, being their best, and doing the best they can with what they've got. And obviously that's a Brené Brown statement. That's okay, because if you can respect that person, you can then demonstrate that respect and, more importantly, expect that respect. So for me, it is very much around respecting who you are today, what you've got to offer today, and knowing that everyone comes from a different position and is doing the best they can with what they've got.
Exactly. And it again highlights a lot of, when we bring it back to just even a psychological aspect of things and well-being, and sort of trying to merge that same concept into day-to-day life. We as self are the only constant in every relationship and every interaction we engage in. And, we extend compassion and grace to those. We encourage the extension of compassion and grace to those struggling with difficulties of mental health issues or even physical issues. And yet we do not extend that same grace to ourselves. And, we see these athletes on the screen, we see them, doing their best, and we're cheering them on. And yet we are very, very quick to pull back that compassion if they don't meet our expectation of outcome. And that can be really hard on them. That can be contributing to their inability to manage that level of disappointment. And I'm sure that also contributes to the stigma that they are trying to manage. There's a lot of different tips that we engage in and that we encourage people to engage in to reduce that stigma, to support individuals' ability to stand in their truth and share their struggles. And that's about talking openly. That is about educating ourselves, and also language. So all of those various points that each of you have shared are definitely valuable and highlighted even now more so. So why are we still fighting the stigma? Why are we still looking at these athletes as being these role models of perfection, of ideology, of that we need to be like them? Do you think that's fair? Do you think that we need to sort of re-engage some of the language and dialogue that we even share with our young about athletes, about the professional course of sports? Mel, what do you think?
First off, apologies for dropping out.
Okay.
Lengthy story. Talk about mental wellness or mental fitness. My 86-year-old dad unplugged the power and I was running off a hub. So anyway, he needed to plug in the chainsaw. So that's the type of life I live in. The role model piece, like I really believe that term role models is one of the most overused words we have in our society. I mean, the professional level is a great vision or a great summit to see, because there's, it continues to reinforce the pathway you're on. You see it, if you see it, believe it, you can do it. It stretches your limits of thinking about what could be out there. But as a coach over so many years, that I constantly get asked the question, like, who's your role model? Who's your mentor? And I can honestly say I don't have one, because I always try to take the best of what I see in people and what I get from people. And I also see some of the worst. And I'm like, I work hard to not put that as part of my day to day. So I think the challenge that we have with, the social media, TV, all of the great publicity and coverage that sports just gets now, is that we see these people in a light. We never see them as real people. Like, you sit down with anybody, it's completely different than what they look like on TV. And if they've done their job as athletes and coaches have done their jobs, all their staff has done their jobs around them, then you're seeing them at their very, very best.
Right.
And nobody is at your very, very best every day. So the more I believe we can normalize our athletes, and we're starting to see more of that, stories done on athletes and the challenges and the things they've gone through to get where they're at, the more it starts to be a bit real. But I don't know if we'll ever eliminate it just because of the great coverage we get in sports, but we really need to keep it in perspective and in balance.
Thank you. Yeah, fair enough. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think that also we, because we pay the athletes so much, the expectation is that they should be perfect and they should be able to let the mental stresses roll off their back. That they're supposed to be trained for all this. And And I think that's, there's a different conversation there probably altogether. However, I think that's asking too much, because they are people, they are real people, and a lot of the high performing athletes that I know, that I've spoken to and had conversations with, they just want to be treated like real people, and they don't want to be harassed. They don't want to do. They just want to have conversations. They just want to be one of us. And yes, they're incredibly talented and they can do these things, but they are real people. And I think it goes back to that over and over again. It's spot on what Mel said. We need to treat them with a little more normalcy, per se, and see them as people, as opposed to the superstars that we put them on the pedestal of. And I think that also allows them the flexibility to perform better, because it takes those stresses off of them. And I think we as the fan base can help them be better with how we treat them.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And again, part of the reason, that was motivating me to do such a talk is the fact that things were opening up, that the Olympics were coming in, that we had, the Euro Cup. There were so many big events that again, as a fan, we're looking forward to seeing. It was the closest thing to what our previous COVID normal was, that we tend to sort of magnify the importance of it to our lives as an escape, right? From some of the downs that we've had, forgetting that these athletes have also experienced the same thing. They've experienced COVID in the same way. And though the impact is different, right? Their outcomes are different. Their training was limited. There's so many different variables that as a fan, we don't appreciate. And, it's also a matter of, like, we have a lot of young children, striving towards this position of excellence within an industry of sporting as their dream. And that, can be fueled by parents. It can be fueled by coaches. There's so many variables. So again, it raises the point of, are we doing right by putting these athletes where we do, on these pedestals, in the limelight, in the way that we do, even for the young? So Wayne, just to continue that question forward, where do you think things lie with that?
Well, I couldn't agree more. Both Mel and the beauty of being the third is I get two brilliant experts who basically say, and I really just continue, the hyperbole with which our sporting performers are described in mass media starts becoming a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, particularly for a young person whose emotional development is still in play and who might, through whatever pressures, start to believe their own press, for want of a better term. But the reflection on someone being the next Tiger Woods, and forgive me for not using a hockey analogy, I could only say Gretzky, and I'm not sure if that's
all good.
But that is a monumental burden to wear for anyone, let alone a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
The next Roger Federer, the next Katie Ledecky in the swimming world. That is an incredible burden for people to suffer under. And the risk is that they start to believe it. And therefore they may lose sight of why they're playing the sport to start with, or that they don't live up to it, in which case they feel that they've let someone else down. It comes back to that. So I fundamentally believe that the hyperbole that the broader media bring, and with that comes dollars, with that comes endorsement, with that becomes red carpet ceremonies and other trappings of fame, so to speak, are a long way removed from why did the 8-year-old turn up to the local soccer club just to kick a ball, or to go to the local swimming pool to get to the other end, or to get to one side of the Rideau Canal to the other in winter on skates. To me, it's really about the love, and we've just got to be mindful of the language we use when describing someone. No, they are not Superman or Superwoman. No, they're not bulletproof. They're not 15 feet tall and leap tall buildings. To Michael's point, they're a human being who has the same fears and anxieties and ups and downs and emotions and relationships as everyone else. It just so happens that plays out in front of everyone with an unfair, in some cases, expectation of who they are and what they are, as opposed to, and I think Mel certainly would have used this, I'm sure, as a coach, that the best player from the other team still only has 2 legs, still bleeds red blood, still breathes oxygen like the rest of us. They're not some superhuman. They can be skated around or whatever. So to me, it is about how do we position the people, and they are just human, and they bring with them all the frailties of human, and let's not place them on a pedestal that no one deserves and is certainly not ready for it, for teenagers especially.
Yeah. And though let's be honest, and Mel touched upon it, and we've all touched upon it slightly, the honest truth right now and the reality in which we're in is they are in a position of influence, right? Each of us are in a position of influence. We each have a sphere of influence that surrounds us in order for each one of us to be that domino effect of change. And the change that we are hoping to achieve, even from this real talk, is about the promotion and advocacy for positive dialogue, conversation around mental health, mental fitness, as Michael, eloquently has relabeled it, which I love, absolutely love that terminology. That in itself just flows off in a more positive way that is accepting of what it is. It is around, engaging in various activities, whether it be conversation, whether it be physical activities, to help you feel better, to help you feel good. And that positive mental state that we all want to achieve, because ultimately it just makes everything else go really well too. So the reality is, though, again, that they are in a position of influence, that we do look towards them as a means of a reflection of what we want to be or what we are working towards being. So how can we leverage that? What can we do, or what do you think may need to change within the culture of sports as it relates to maintaining that type of positive mental state? Mike.
So back to the athlete's perspective, I think there's one thing that's really important to understand is that the athlete does have responsibility. And one of the key responsibilities there is understanding who their own personal brand is. And I think that's something that athletes need to be very, very aware, very conscious of, is understanding what brand they're putting out there. One of the things I work with a lot of athletes is exactly on that. Who are you inside your sport? Who are you outside of your sport? That's your brand. Everything you do, everybody you connect with, everybody you talk to, everything you align with, be it endorsements and otherwise, that's all part of your personal brand. It's important to understand that, because that ultimately is what you're giving out to the public, and you need to live it. That's the other thing too. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to walk your talk. And I think that's really important. As it relates to, the culture, I think one of the emphases we really need to put back on is fun. Is one of the things that we lose in sport a lot, is the emphasis on fun. I mean, most every athlete at any level gets into the sport because they love the sport. That to me is ultimately where it needs to go, and try and focus back to the fun aspect of it. I think sometimes the business gets in the way, and we lose focus a little bit of why we were in that sport to begin with. And very often it's usually because we love it. And I actually work with some guys that are, on the PGA level, and they struggle sometimes with, who am I going to be, and what can I do to really get myself back to where I love to play the game. And it was about, finding the fun in it again. That's a big one. Resetting the fun factor is huge. I think that's really important. It's something that we need to push more and more on athletes, and start it young with the young kids. And that's where it starts. And if we can maintain it, and sort of go back to it. It's like businesses. They start businesses, they forget why they started. They go in the wrong direction. So I say, come back to why you got into this to begin with, and I think we'll work ourselves in a better direction because of it.
Excellent, thank you. Mel, how about you? What's your thought on that?
Well, just listening to Michael really sparked, the identity piece is huge, like who you are and why you're playing. And again, if we go back to language, the importance of how we say things. So if I'm introducing Wayne, instead of using his title or what he's done in the past or what, maybe I'm more authentic about who he is as a person. Wayne's a father of how many children, or
Right.
whatever it might be, right? Because what happens is we get so immersed, you become Christina the swimmer, or Michael the golfer, or Mel the hockey coach. And I mean, one of the reasons that I shifted from Hockey Canada to Own the Podium is that the people in my life now only knew me as hockey. They didn't know that I was multi-sport before. So the language of how we identify or introduce people or talk about people is really important, so that our identity doesn't get lost in what we do. Who we are is crucial, and that athletes, understand that, and are a part of that. And then the second piece that I would put there is the more human we can make people, the better. So using social media or TV, whatever it might be, to our advantage, and telling the stories of all of our athletes and all of the people behind them, their families. It just makes them more real. And then you start to look at an athlete or a role model, and you're like, wow, they're just like me that way. Not just like me because we play the same sport. That would be my 2 bits there.
Yeah. And again, like everything that you and Michael have said can definitely relate to us, non-athlete folk. And that is about, while yes, those athletes have a particular brand, well, so do we. That brand is what we present to the world, whether it be, on the street, walking to the grocery store, or within our occupations of choice. We represent and we display who we want someone to see us as. And we can't lose that or be something that we're not, because then that's going to pull away at our strings of positive mental state. We're not going to be happy because we're not authentically us. And part of the pre-talk that we had, there was mention with regards to legacy left. And Mel, that was your term with regards to talking about the legacy. And you made reference about your own right now. And like people saw you as hockey and only hockey, when there's so many different layers to who Mel is. And part of this is, again, contributing to those building blocks that do start at a very young age that have fueled this culture within the sports. So to go back to that question, Wayne, I want to hear your part in what do you think we need to start doing, just even the outskirts of general public, to organizations, to coach level, all those various elements to start maintaining a more positive outlook within mental health, within mental fitness, and within that culture of sports.
It sounds too easy to say that words matter, because we've all said it, but it is how we position our people. And to Mel's point, it is about understanding who the human is, not who the robot or artificial intelligence who just happens to be the fastest person from one end of a track to the other, or from, they are a human. And how do we reveal the human there whilst protecting the privacy? And how do we reveal the vulnerabilities and not have those vulnerabilities preyed upon? So, and again, the respect piece comes in, that if any of my colleagues here on this panel were to reveal something about themselves to me, that's quite an intimate reveal, and it's part of a trusting relationship, and it's shared, and I respect that and hold that, not to tweet that, post that, or use that to my advantage.
Right.
So I guess it comes down to, how do we instill in our organisations, in our communities, in ourselves, the notion of respect, what has been shared and why it's been shared, and who someone is, but revealing in a trusting relationship. So it's trying to create that trust where that. So I probably haven't answered that very articulately, other than to say that I think we can do a far better job as a community, as a society. And I'm not a social media person. I don't have social media, though my wife would say that Strava is my social media. But to me, the comparison that is used for Instagram or Facebook, and the keyboard warriors that allow for those things, it demonstrates a lack of respect and courtesy for who someone is. Therefore, people are less willing to reveal any of themselves, and create this this cardboard cutout of this sporting icon. So, yeah, as I said, I probably haven't answered that too clearly, but to me, it is about showing the respect for the individual, and they are in fact a human, and we promote and support and respect people for their human element, who happen to be good at painting, acting, singing, running, or a multitude of all of those things. Yeah. But by and large, they are a good person. So,
Wayne, would you say that it's about the organization's responsibility to create a safe environment for their athletes? Is that that's sort of what I picked up from? I think that was the key message that I got.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for bringing that into other people. Yes, that's absolutely the case. Thank you.
Perfect. Love it.
And again, it can definitely be translated into, regular life and current organizations, whether it be corporate or not. It is providing a culture. It's providing this opportunity, this platform of non-judgmental, honest transparency, respect, courtesy. The language, of course, is something that we highlight in a lot of our mental health initiatives. Language does matter in so many ways to lessen the stigma. And, we've become educated in what a more positive way to say something versus what not to say. And yet we haven't shifted that with regards to how we reference individuals. And that's where, again, it continues to fuel that stigma, because that's where language hasn't shifted either. And, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of focus on diversity and inclusion. And we did a real talk last month around that. And it is about, accepting and appreciating one for all that they are, the layers that they bring, the various identity that they, feel that they can identify with, those various characteristics, and not just, what they look like or what their religion is, or in this case, what their actual career choice has been. Because that's what it is. It's a career.
That's a really strong point, Christina. I mean, I grew up in regional outback Australia, in a state that probably best resembles one of our Western provinces here in Canada in terms of the demography, the culture. They're all words that I'm ashamed to have used, and certainly heard used when I was at school, that would never be uttered. And I'm ashamed and embarrassed by that myself, that we would never, ever use, be it around race, religion, sexuality, etc. I think the evolution is when we're no longer referring to someone's health with the same disparaging terminology. That person's having a bad day. That's okay, as opposed to something more derogatory or discriminatory that says that person, that labels that person. At that point in time, their behaviour may be demonstrating that they're not travelling very well and could do with some help, as opposed to they are insert. So I think that's the language piece. And as a society and as a community, I'd like to think we've come some journey. As a person of privilege, I can acknowledge we've got a long, long way to go. And I'm sure that there are people participating today that still regularly hear and feel slurs that are completely unacceptable. And I'm privileged to have not experienced that. However, that's the journey we need to continue around mental health, like all parts of our community that make it so rich and robust.
Exactly. And again, it is, one of the main, contributing factors to bringing to the surface a lot of the struggles that individuals experience is utilizing platforms like this in really addressing and utilizing the privilege that we do have to voice those concerns, to bring to the surface, to bring to the forefront what needs to be talked about, what may have been lost in translation or lost in the spotlight of the action, on the field or in the pool or on the golf course. And we need to start really looking at what is our duty versus what is our responsibility as humans. And, I always say duty is what's imposed on you, and responsibility is what you choose to take on and what you choose to do with it. And I, for one, am choosing to take a responsibility to really advocate for, a more positive and cultivating culture in general. Around mental health, mental wellness, mental fitness, and allow individuals to flourish in the way that is best suited for them. And if I can support them in that, great. That's to me is the truest gift that I can give them, is my time, my effort, and a platform such as this. So in knowing that each of you have had various levels of interaction with athletes of all sort of levels and in all types of sporting activities, what do you think we can do to help flourish and establish and cultivate a more positive mental wellness within, that aspect? So Mel, given your background and just expertise within more coaching and leadership, right? What do you think can happen there?
Well, a lot. I really believe
There's something then.
Consistency in behavior as a leader is extremely important. I've been a part of a lot of individual sports, but my true background is team sports. So, when you're working with team sports, you have, in hockey, we have at least 20 individuals. So how do you show them you care? What does that look like? And defining that out, because it'll be 20 different interpretations for them on what resonates. And that's the same when Michael mentioned the safe environment. We've consistently got to strive for that, but a safe environment looks different for everybody. So again, how do we communicate that and make sure they're okay with it? We really are developing tomorrow's society and working on making that change. So again, just the creating the safe, helping them grow, getting the communication line set up so that everybody is equipped to be the person or the ear that an athlete might need. Not just, if you notice someone's struggling, you're like, oh, they need to go see the mental training consultant. Christina, can you chat with them? As a coach, if I'm the one they want to talk to, I have to be able to have that conversation, recognize it, and not pass judgment and not be influenced on my decisions on playing time or being part of the team. And the players and athletes have to trust that. So for me, really, the underlying is truly consistency, that they really believe that, every day they're going to get the same type of behavior and response from me, and that it's not going to affect my final decisions, because they're honest and authentic in that area. There could be other things, talent-wise, or other outside behaviors that could affect things, but just that consistency for me is crucial. And then recognizing that there's not one glove fits all here. It's different for everybody, and it looks different for everybody.
Yeah. And again, that's one of the main, things that we highlight when we talk about mental health. There's a spectrum, there's a continuum, and we don't all fall within that same spot on the continuum. Experiences are going to be different. While the scenario or the situation may be similar, our perception of it, our feelings of it, our thoughts of it are very unique to us, which that is what we actually respond or react to. And, as I mentioned before, we all have our own sphere of influence, and that I always say the domino effect of change. As soon as one domino falls, the others are forced to follow suit. That is the game of dominoes. And though it does start at one point. So we've talked about the coaches. Now, Wayne, from more organizations, right? What can be done to help flourish and cultivate more positive mental wellness for our athletes, or even that can be transferable?
It's easy to say it starts with policy, but it absolutely starts with policy, and a true commitment from an organisational perspective. From the president of the board, chief executive, and the staff, to developing policies that provide the safety that Mel describes. As that sounds easy, and clearly that's not easy, but that is the easy step. It is about the authentic resourcing of those policies and practices, so that the decision to have a particular support role or roles or training amongst the roles within the team is in fact done. We can have a strong inclusion policy that's never put into practice. Right. We can make strong statements about safe environments that people can come to, or that they know that there's going to have expertise around them. But when the decisions are made to divvy up the last $100, we ran out of money by the time we got to the mental fitness coach or the training for the frontline staff. To Mel's point, so I think it is about an authentic commitment to developing contemporary policies, but then to make sure that we resource to bring those policies to life, and not making the commitment to mental health, mental fitness, if I've got $55 left over from my $100, I'll spend it, but I'm not going to spend it first. Nor do I say it needs to be the first, but it has to take a line in. This is an important part, to Mel's point, we're shaping tomorrow's society. So as important as it is to have a very solid shoulder rotation strength so that you can swim, I would argue it's more important to have someone who's well-rounded and is healthy and is able to flourish in their full lives than to swim in that particular weekend. So that to me, it's developing policies that are contemporary, but then resourcing those policies so that they can come to life. And Michael said it, walk the talk.
And that's exactly it. So, when you sort of introduce that idea of policies and you're just like, well, it's kind of simple, but not really simple. No, it's simple. That's it. We need to even change how we're talking about it. This is a non-negotiable aspect that I think organizations of all sectors need to be committed to, because ultimately you have a business model, you have a product, you have a service, and that is what you are selling. That is what you are presenting. That is your brand. And you have individuals that represent that either sell it or are promoting it. If they are not at their best, then how is your brand going to be? It's going to be a reflection. So companies, organizations, leaders, and I will even go as far as to say parents and schools, anyone that is representing that particular platform, whatever it is a representation of you and what you invest in them. It's time that we invest in people. It's time that we invest in ourselves. And I know that in itself can be difficult because of so many various factors and different expectations, different roles that we have and different demands that are placed upon us, not only by ourselves, but others. So there is a means of how even individuals on an individual level, what we need to do to cultivate and flourish that mental wellness. So Mike, from an individual perspective, and let's start with athletes, what do you think can be done there to help shift the movement forward?
Well, one of the first things off the top for me is, and it's sort of been alluded to, Mel, you brought it up, is that when someone's struggling, we bring in the mental coach. And I think that's part of the problem that we have, is that we wait until someone's struggling in order to pull in a mental coach. And I think the mental coach or the mental fitness trainer is, well, in a perfect world, we'd be teaching this stuff in school, in my opinion, but that's obviously a different topic. But I think it's important, and I love the clients that come to me who are doing really, really well, but they want to get to the next level. And that to me is when they're really going to thrive and really utilize a mental fitness or mental performance coach, is when they're doing well, but they want to move to the next level, as opposed to struggling. And I get we all struggle, and it's important to sort of realign things at that particular point. But I think we miss it sometimes and miss the real value of mental training, which is when you're doing well to bring you even higher. I think that's an important one to look at. From the athlete's perspective, I sort of have, 4 very simple things that I go through. One is focus on what you want and not what you don't want. It's as simple as that. Many athletes are worrying about making mistakes before they go out and perform, be it on the hockey rink or be it, for me on the golf course, is we're worried about not putting it in the water instead of worrying about putting it down the fairway. We're worried about giving the puck away as opposed to knowing that we're going to make a perfect pass. It's a matter of really focusing on what we want instead of what we don't want. The second one is control the controllables, understanding what is truly in your control and what is not. Focus only on that which you can control. So often we put so much emphasis on the things we can't control. And that's a little bit like insanity when you think about it, trying to control something you can't control. Why would we do that? So it's a simple process, but it's something we don't do a lot. And I think that's really important too. Third one is your perspective really is your experience. How you perceive situations, the wins, the losses, the failures, it all dictates your experience, and the experience you have very often helps dictate the successes you have. That's really important. And finally, the last one, and Wayne brought this up earlier, is it starts with you. No one else can do this but you. As an athlete, you have the power, you have the decision making capabilities to approach it from your perspective. Lots of people will tell you what to do or not to do, but at the end of the day, no one can really tell you what to think. So as an individual athlete, it starts with you, and I think that's so important, and you need to take ownership of that, and it's powerful.
And again, it's completely something that all of us can learn from and actually work through those same steps. Each of you talked about various elements that I see as critical and fundamental to shifting parameters and viewpoints on mental health and being able to normalize that conversation that, today I'm having a shitty day, and that's okay. And being able to have those honest conversations about those times that you are just not at your top form. Mel talked about consistency, and that's something that, again, outside factors or outside individuals can allow us the comfort to be able to share that today is not a good day because I have this special relationship or this trusted relationship that you are not going to judge me. And yet it is that fact that, perception of an expectation of the situation does fall on us. And we need to question that. We need to explore that, but we also need to embrace it for what it actually is. And we normalize normal. Yeah.
If I may very briefly, and then that goes to the point around organization. If one of your work colleagues or someone that you're supervising comes into work and, hey, how are you doing today? Oh, I've got a really sore knee. Or I've got a bit of an upset stomach. It might have been something I ate last night. We have a reaction or a response. Yeah. But if that same person were to say, I feel depressed, I feel manic, I feel whatever the mental health condition may be, I'm not really sure what to do now. So we've normalized sore legs or sore stomach, headache, whatever, but we haven't quite got to that organizational level of, that's okay. Let me know how you're doing or if there's anything I can do to help. That type of thing. So sorry to jump in there.
No, but that's exactly what it is, right? Yeah. And, even if let's take, and I don't like using this as the example, but it is something that worldwide we all experienced at the same time. And that was the pandemic, right? Where life just kind of stopped and brakes were sort of pressed and we didn't even know which way we were going, and even how businesses or our daily lives and habits and routines would move forward. And we were all faced with an overwhelming level of stress and unknown and uncertainty. But what we all failed to realize and appreciate is that uncertainty is something that we deal with on a daily basis. Uncertainty is the only certainty that we actually have. So pre-COVID experience, we normalized what our normal was. So as we are starting to lift restrictions and starting to look at, things going back to the way that they were, we're trying to normalize that experience again. Not paying attention to what are we actually feeling about the experience? What did we actually learn that we wanted to take and move forward? And this sort of goes against to the, some of the steps that Michael was talking about focus on what you want, focus on what you're hoping to achieve. And it's not about goals, it's about targets. And I remember, Mike, you mentioned that. And that really hit for me quite a bit because we do often talk about goals as a means of something to work towards. But your analogy of using targets instead sort of hit the nail on the head, for lack of a better verbiage, that I think can really help drive this conversation beyond today. So I'm going to let you mention about the targets. I don't want to steal your thunder there because I think you did a really great job in talking about that.
Yeah, and I think goals have very much in our minds, goals have ends. And sometimes when we achieve goals, we almost were faced with letdown because there's nothing else. Yeah. And I think targets and the reason I call them targets is because targets in our mind are a little more movable. You can set a target. It can be a huge target, but the minute you attain it, you can move to the next one, and you can constantly move targets. And I think it changes energetically how we look at things, and how we tag, or how we follow our targets, or follow our goals, so to speak. I think one of the other things that's important to talk about too is the fact that you see, here we go again. I just forgot what I was gonna say. Back to you, Christina.
No problem. So we are approaching towards wrapping up. So what I do want is not to stop the conversation by any means, but allow any individual that's joined us live to ask any questions of our panelists. So you do have access to sort of a chat feature. So please do pose your questions, and we are more than happy to engage our panelists in answering them if you so have them. But to continue the conversation as those questions are coming in, I think one thing that we need to appreciate as well is we globally are in a state of, or an age of anxiety, right? And if we think about anxiety in its truest form, it's about, the fear of a threat, or the fear, right? It's just heightened anxiety, heightened stress levels that really cloud our judgment and cloud our ability to actually move forward and hit those targets. So where I'm going with this is with regards to, starting those conversations around the honest and transparent, authentic experience that you may be feeling is something that we've promoted throughout all of our Real Talks. It's something that Bell Let's Talk promotes, is with regards to that conversation, right? And we talked about language as being a means of starting that conversation. And what do you say? How do you say it? How can we be consistent in our messaging? How can we set the environment to flourish that conversation? And how can we as individuals be that inspiration to somebody else to do the same? So if I was to ask each of you to come up with sort of this, we'll say the bus stop sign, right? That one statement that you think would be of the most powerful message for someone, whether it be an athlete, a coach, an organization, or even an individual, to continue to speak their truth and inspire others to do the same. What would that statement be? What would your bus stop be? You guys didn't expect this one. I know.
This is good.
Right?
Well, I'm gonna jump in, Christina, and only because it's actually the tagline to my business. And being, a law of attraction coach, I'm all about what you focus on, you attract. And that would be my bus stop. And thank you. It was an easy one for me. Sorry, guys.
Oh, all right. Mel.
Gosh, I'm drawing a complete blank, to be honest.
So am I.
Yeah, taglines. It takes me a while to put those types of things together. Sorry, Christina, just a complete blank.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries. Wayne?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I'll be very honest. It's nothing. I don't have the buzz line. I don't have the, to me, it's really about the authentic you. But
there you go.
So much more of me is about how we treat others, because you can be the authentic you if you feel safe to be the authentic you. Now it's turning into quite a big bus stop. It's almost a billboard. But to me, it is really about, I can be me, but I need to have trust that you're all going to respect, and it's safe for me to be me. So,
you know what? I accept that billboard. You've just earned the right and purchase of the big billboard with the spotlights on it, because that is exactly what I feel is that magic ingredient to really lessening the stigma even more so. And that is, we need to create a culture, whether it be in our direct sphere of influence or just in that overarching societal view. And that is, we should not be shamed or embarrassed and to be who we are. And we need to create that ability or that culture to look at, regardless of what you are going through. We're all going through something. And while I'm not lessening your experience of what you're going through to what I'm going through, there needs to be the appreciation, the mutual respect that we only know what we know. And we need to be able to allow others to share their truths when they're comfortable and what their truth actually is. Speaking out about struggles is not a sign of weakness. And quite often we say it's a sign of strength. I say it's a sign of change.
It's an interesting one for me, Christina, and with yourself and with Mel and Michael. It's as an athlete comes forward to demonstrate or to say, I'm not traveling well, I'm not doing well, whatever that might be. And the decision point around, should I pick them on the team today? Are they fit to perform? And the risk at that team level, organizational and team, is they may not be. And it's because we know that mental health is so often hidden. It's not like you have a bandage on your hand or your arm in a sling, that people are unable to see why a decision could have been taken, which has that in a high-performing team environment where people are then becoming fearful to disclose, and it goes to Mel's point around safety. I actually, that's a conundrum that I guess I look to my colleagues to say, to me, that's just another area, if we've got time, to explore that authenticity versus risk reward. Because if someone under medical advice is actually a risk to themselves or others, or to the performance of the team, and I put that deliberately third, what does that look like in a safe environment? So I'll ask the hard questions now.
Are you expecting me to answer that, or can I defer? No. I think it goes to, again, anything, whether it be athletes or not. It's a duty of care that we have towards our fellow humans. We ultimately want everyone to feel healthy, happy, secure, and safe. And sometimes what happens is when we are in this heightened state of stress or anxiety or overwhelm, our own judgments and our own self-awareness can be clouded. So we have to look to those trusted individuals. We have to look to, the coaches, the parents, the teachers, to be our clear view of the situation and how we are managing it. And this is where, again, conversation, education can allow all of us to play that part if we are entrusted to do so. We must always remember that regardless of what our role is in someone's life, if they share with us something that is very vulnerable and private and intimate about their experience, they've chosen us. We did not choose them. That is a gift. That is a right not to be ignored or abused in any way. And if there is this feeling or this insecurity of not being able to show up for that person in the way that they are looking for us to do, that's okay too. It's okay to accept that, to own that, and, not be that person, but know where the resources are for that person. Now, looking at the time, I am mindful for everybody's time. So are there any sort of last minute comments, tips, strategies that each of you wish to share with our attendees with regards to what we talked about today, or something that maybe we didn't even get to that you feel would be of value and inspiration to share? Mel?
Sure. I'll just, be courageous. Like we've been talking about changing the stigma and mental wellness, mental fitness for a long time. Even before it became public knowledge, if you will. So you have to, as leaders, you have to be courageous. We only break the cycle if we all engage in breaking the cycle and are committed to it. So, you have to change the status quo, and you have to take responsibility for that. If you've put yourself in the role of a leader of people, regardless of whether it's a staff in a business or whether it's an athletic program or team. So be courageous.
Thank you. Wayne?
For me, I said at the start, respect the person you see every morning. And then once you can respect that person, demonstrate that respect with all your other interactions. The world will be a happier place if we're all able to respect each other for who we are, and that starts with ourselves.
Thank you kindly. Mike?
Yeah, and I would agree with Wayne 100% there is, be your authentic self, be you, love who you are, and kind of don't care what other people think. Do your thing and own your thing, and be okay with who you are. And I think that when you're in that place, you give more to the world.
Wonderful. Thank you. And this is again where, it does start with each of us and being okay with, all of our layers. And I keep on saying layers because that is who we are. There's so many different components to my identity that make me who I am. And I am unapologetically me. And anyone that knows me from the professional world as well as personal world know that I am truly unapologetically me. And though I do, put my firm foot forward in trying to advocate towards what I see is our job, right? And we're talking about athletes and sort of looking at what their career choice has been. And yet as a nation, as worldwide, regardless of what our role is, we have a job. And our job is to help erase, lessen attitudes, discrimination associated with not only receiving mental health services, but speaking about it. And we know that conversation contributes to the lessening of the stigma. It normalizes that experience. It allows all of us to break down those barriers that we have built up to say, I need to shy away from this because I don't want the judgment. I don't want people to look at me as being weak or less than. You are you, I am me, and we need to embrace that. We need to celebrate that. And having those honest, transparent, genuine conversations, similar to what we've done today. And I do thank each and every single one of you for joining me today. I know I've said it many, many times, but I cannot say it enough. Because it is conversations like this that will reduce the power of stigma. Regardless of our experiences not being so picture perfect and not being neat and tidy, that's life. Life has joys and life has pains. But to truly be authentically you, to truly be part of the change, we need to be part of the conversation on both sides of that spectrum. So with that, again, a special thank you to my panelists for joining me. A special thank you to all those that have joined us live and for those that will be viewing us afterwards. Your contribution, panelists, have definitely left us all better informed. We've definitely pulled back the curtain and have really looked at exploring the professional athlete sector of the sporting industry in a different light. For that, I thank you. I thank you on behalf of the athletes for having this conversation and allowing this platform to be shared to advocate for their truth. So thank you very much. And everyone, I encourage you to continue doing your part, continue the conversation beyond today. Thank you.